My name is Steph and I'm here today to talk about phonics. It's a really tiny word, but it means so much to our children, and it's the key to reading, and I'm sure you'd agree without being able to read, life would be very challenging. However, in the UK currently, 1 in 4 children are actually leaving school unable to read to the required standard, and even more concerning is that 2 in 5 premium children leave school unable to read at this standard as well. Just to help you visualise a little bit, let me show you what it would look like if you read with even 90% efficiency. Sounds pretty good, 90%, I'd be pleased if I got that in a test, but in reality it's pretty hard to try and decode and understand the text. I'll give you a second, see if you can do it. But you have to work hard, don't you, So it says, the cat watched the witch dropped a slimy newt into a big cauldron. So my passion is definitely reading, and when I teach my Year R class each year, my main aim is to make sure they leave my class able to read. This year I've actually left class teaching to work with Kingsnorth English Hub as their lead practitioner, but I'm also remaining the reading leader in Kingsnorth School. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of teaching schools and maths hubs now. English hubs are still in their infancy. They were launched in October 2018, so they've not even been around a year yet. And there are now 34 hubs across the country. They're all in primary schools and they're all working towards the same 3 aims, which are these: developing early reading through the use of systematic synthetic phonics, developing early language and closing the word gap, and also promoting a love of reading. So phonics has been a key focus in education for a long time, and since the Road Report was published, we've had a lot of recommendations around what phonics work is like. So things like high quality phonics work should be taught systematically and discreetly as the prime approach used in the teaching of early reading. The Rose Report also said high quality phonics teaching can substantially reduce the number of children who fall below age-related expectations. So it is something really in focus at the moment. I know you've recently had Ofsted, some of you, but in the new Ofsted framework it explicitly identifies early reading as a focus, stating that inspectors will pay particular attention to pupils who are reading below age-related expectations, so that lowest 20%, to assess how well the school is teaching phonics and supporting all children to be confident and fluent readers. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. How can we teach phonics to get those fluent and confident readers out of our children? So I've kind of got you 10 key things, which I normally do in 45 minutes. So I've squashed it down. So we'll just whiz through those 10 top tips, as it were. So number 1 is to choose one scheme and make sure you stick to it. So choose a scheme that ensures success for all your pupils, particularly looking at those lowest 20%, and teach it with fidelity, consistency and continuity, and those are the 3 key words I think I should have tattooed on me from working with the English Hub. So fidelity means you follow all the elements of the scheme, you don't just pick and choose the bits you like from each different phonics scheme. They've all been rigorously tested and research has gone into them, so there is a reason why all those steps are there. Consistency, really, really key. So anyone teaching phonics in your school should be teaching in the same way, following the same teaching steps, so that children are repeating their phonics teaching and beginning to get to know exactly that consistent approach, so it's hardwired into their brains. Think a bit like when you've learnt to drive. You had to really think about that process when you first started. I couldn't even have the radio on when I first went out driving. That was after I passed my test. But now I'll happily drive to work without even thinking about how I got there, and that's what we want children to get to with their reading, just to be able to do it without even thinking about it. And continuity, we want something that continually builds on the children's knowledge and teaches them in a sequence that makes sense and builds bit by bit, so eventually they can become fluent and literate readers. So So second one, and this is definitely something we've done in our school, we've made reading that core purpose of our school, and that's only going to come with someone that's leading with passionate leadership, and it might involve a complete change in culture of your school. Everyone teaching the children needs to understand how those children in reception learn to read, so the Year 6 teachers need to know how their children learnt to read in Key Stage 1. It's not something that stops at the end of Key Stage 1 and doesn't continue. You might need a dedicated reading leader like myself in my school that really keeps it out there as like the focus in the school, and ensure people have been trained and have got the right resources to teach the programme effectively. The third one, something we're right at the beginning of the year, is making sure those reception children are reading from the very beginning. English is a very complex language. There's 44 phonemes or sounds, but there's over 176 graphemes, so ways that we can write those sounds. So it is not an easy language, as I'm sure all the people teaching phonics know. So we need to start as soon as possible with reception. They need engaging, teacher-led instruction and just a sound each day to build up their phonic knowledge and keep practicing. We do a lot of oral blending, so we might say, come and sit on the mat. So they've got to orally blend that word together and think, oh yeah, I've got to go and sit on the mat. So they're beginning that step into reading. And we also quickly identify any children that aren't keeping up from the very beginning. Try and fill that gap before it widens. Making time for phonics and reading and writing. Obviously we need a dedicated phonics lesson, but also making sure that it's referred to in all your other lessons with that consistency we were talking about. That should be if you're writing in geography or history, children should be using their phonic knowledge or the way that they've been taught to sound out for spelling. And if everyone's teaching it in the same way, that should transfer across to other subjects. Number 5 is assessment. This is one of the key roles of myself as reading leader. I'm constantly assessing the children, making sure they're in the right group for their phonic ability. We group our children at Kingsnorth as by their phonic stage, not their age. So we've got children working across R1 and 2, sometimes even Year 3, who are mixed together, working at the stage that is appropriate for them. So they're not finding it difficult because they don't know the sounds that they're expected to know in that group. It's pitched to their ability. Obviously we don't just leave it to the end of term to assess. We might move children in the middle of the term if they look like they could move into a different group. So it's a fluid assessment throughout the year. Focusing on the lowest 20%, this is one of the key focuses of the English Hub, is that we're looking at that lowest bottom 20% of children to try and boost them up so that they become fluent readers. So in order to do this, place your strongest teachers with your lowest children when they're teaching the phonic groups, and quickly identify children who are falling behind. And they might need extra steps in their learning, or one-to-one, or to be taught in a smaller group, or be pre-taught something that the text that they're going to be reading, so that they're ready for their lesson. Number 7, build a team of expert reading teachers. So I spoke about training, how important it is to train everyone, but that's not the end. You don't send them on training and then that's it. We have ongoing visits from our phonic provider who updates us and keeps us up to date, but we also run weekly practice sessions for the teachers. Just like the children need to practice and practice and practice their phonics, the teachers need to practice their teaching of phonics. But we don't practice on the children, we practice with each other and make sure that we're really confident when we're going into our lessons. We also do coaching with teachers, so we might do some team teaching in the lesson, and I go round the phonics group as often as I can to really get that culture that it is coaching and it's not an observation, it's not someone judging you, it's how can we make this even better. Okay, number 8 is definitely one that's in the spotlight at the moment is decodable books, making sure that we're providing books to the children that they have the phonics skills to decode, and that they're given in a progressive sequence, including some tricky words that you've taught. But basically it's making sure that you are matching the reading books to the children's phonic knowledge. I went on some training yesterday, and someone said it was like when you learn to play the recorder. When you first learn, you only learn maybe 3 notes. And you wouldn't expect someone who knows 3 notes to be able to play a piece of music that had 10 notes in it. You just wouldn't even think of sending that home, but yet that's what what we've done in the past with children. We'll send a reading at home with sounds in that they don't actually know yet. And I know I've read with a child and go, oh, you don't know that sound, it's this. So it's making sure that they haven't got that failure, that they're able to use their phonic knowledge to decode the book and feel proud of it. And again, sending home books they've read at school so they can take it home and read it in a storyteller's voice and be really proud that they have read that book. Children love repetition and reading the same book over again, so it gives them that opportunity. And then once they can read those unfamiliar words confidently, using their phonic knowledge, that's when they can read the wider literature and start their reading journey, really. I think until they get to that point that they can read what they want to read, you haven't really started to develop that love of reading and your journey. A bit of a controversial one, number set 9, support the parents. Try and involve them as much as you can. In my school we teach demonstration lessons to year R1 and 2 parents so they can see how we're teaching their children, how to pronounce the sounds, and also to get that fidelity of whatever they're being taught at home, because a lot of reading does happen at home. Make sure they're not getting a different message from their parents or grandmas or grandpas or whatever. We also, sadly, now quite often have to show parents how to read a story, a bedtime story to their children, and also help them to know what those quality books are and give suggestions home. Which builds on to my last one, which is possibly my favourite one, which is story time. I just think it's so key. If you're giving children only phonics books to read, which is brilliant because they're really feeling positive about their reading, you need as a teacher to share those books that are above the children's reading level, that have got that rich vocabulary, and by all means then they can share the book with their parents, they can retell the story. You can teach new vocabulary in the context of the story, and again that repetition, children love to hear it again and again and again and again. I'm sure we've all seen 2-year-olds that can read the Gruffalo, but it's just because they've heard it 100 times, they know the whole story off by heart. We also try and plan story time so that you're not just picking any book off the shelf, you are reading a book that you are passionate about, that you've got a love for, that you can share that enthusiasm for, and you know what happens next, so you can use the right expression, you can show excitement and build up and show your love for that book. And also displaying books facing forward, like in Waterstones, so that they're enticing for the children rather than a big jumble in the book corner that they have to search through. They can just see straight away. Publishers spend loads of money on illustrators doing beautiful front covers for books, that they have to show those to the children so they can get them. So that is my kind of very quick top tips for phonics. If you would like any support with phonics teaching in your school, please contact the English Hub. We have a variety of free support on offer. You can attend a showcase event with us where you can see some phonics work in action. We can support you to write an action plan to develop your teaching of phonics in your school. We can visit your school and work with you on an audit of what you're doing now, what resources you have. And finally, we can provide you with funding to help teach phonics in your school. So thank you very much for listening. I hope I've filled my 10-minute slots. Yeah. And I'll just leave you with another quote, this one from Michael Morpurgo. But thank you very much.